Good morning. I'm Jo Chamberlain, the Executive Director of the Coastside Land Trust. Welcome to a two-part series on the native wildflowers and plant communities of Half Moon Bay. Today we have with us Toni Corelli, an expert on the local flora, and we are so delighted to have her with us. Today she'll be talking about the plant communities of Half Moon Bay between the dunes and the bluff top along the California Coastal Trail that runs through the city of Half Moon Bay in Central California. There is no reason to believe that we will have a power outage, but if we do, we will contact all of you and let you know what our plan is. So welcome, Toni. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Toni Corelli, and I'm a botanist. I received my degree in botany from San Jose State. I was born in California and grew up in the hills of Redwood City near what is now Edgewood County Park. Discovering this area is what led me to my love of nature. After I grew up and got my degree in botany, I wrote the flora of Edgewood County Park. That is what I've been doing for most of my career, walking the trails in open space preserves and natural areas, taking photos and adding to the existing lists of plants that occur here. I've been a paid environmental consultant identifying plants and plant communities on public lands. As a volunteer docent at Henrico State Park, Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve, Edgewood County Park, Año Nuevo State Park, and recently Half Moon Bay State Park. I love being in the field and looking at all of nature. I'd like to give a shout out to my husband of 48 years, Richard, and my son, Alexander, who have been with me on this journey and have helped me in so many ways. So now we're going to start the slideshow and learn about the plants, the native plants and plant communities of Half Moon Bay. Here you can see a few of the plants that we have along the Coastside Trail, the California goldfields, the California poppy, and the blue-eyed grass. These maps show where I'm going to be taking you today on our walk from Half Moon Bay State Beach all the way in this green area here to the Wavecrest area in Half Moon Bay. And the Google Earth map shows a little bit of the grassland area that we'll be walking on. And the Coastside Trail map shows you the whole Coastside Trail. We'll just be walking on this small area here about 3 miles long. We'll be visiting 4 plant communities or habitats and learning about 40 different plants. By the way, if you have questions during the presentation, and you notice that I have plant number slides, plant slide numbers, you can make a note of the slide number if you want to refer to a specific slide. I'll be answering questions after the talk, and any questions I don't get to, I'll try to answer, and it will be posted on the Coastside Land Trust webpage, as well as reference notes and other things that go along with this presentation. So flowers come in a great variety of sizes and shapes and colors. There are over 300 different plant species, native and naturalized, in Half Moon Bay that have been documented so far. They're attracting the pollinators, the insects, birds, and other animals that live among them, especially the pollinators that pollinate the flowers. This is and then they produce the fruit and seeds for the next generation. This is a success. This is the success of a natural ecosystem, the combination of the plants and animals being together and making this plant community. Today, first of all, we're going to go on the nature trail that goes just north of the campground at Francis Beach this nature trail. Here's the Coastside Trail right here. And then we're going to cut across and go on the nature trail and learn about the coastal dune, the dune plant community, get back on the coastal trail and go south towards Wavecrest, about 3-mile trip. Oh, by the way, this brochure is available, will be available on the Coastside Land Trust webpage, and you can download it. This is a guide to the nature trail showing the plants and some of the interactions that the plants and animals have there. Let's see here. Half Moon Bay State Beach Dunes Nature Trail is our first plant community. This is the plant community here. Each community, groups of plants, a plant community is a group of plants sharing a common environment, interacting with each other, and associated animals and the physical environment. You can see these plants are growing on shifting sand. They have very little nutrients available to them because the moisture goes right through the sand as well as the water, the rainwater. They're exposed to saltwater spray and strong winds. This plant community is literally on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, and the high tide line goes almost up to the dunes. Now I'll show you some of the plants that are in this plant community. These are just a few of the plants that I'll be showing you. There's so many more. So if we look at the dune community and habitats, you can see that the plants are very low growing and influenced. A plant community is influenced by 4 main factors: soil type, topography, climate, and biotic factors. The soil type here is sand. The topography is the elevation is 0, and the plants grow on these rolling, shifting dunes. The climate, our average temperature in Half Moon Bay is between 46 and 66. 46 usually in the evenings, and can get up to 66. Rarely do we have frost here, so these plants don't have to put up with that. The average rain is about 24 inches per year, and it occurs mainly in the winter months. Fog is very important because these plants depend on the fog drip for moisture in the summer. The biotic factors here are the impacts of the people, animals, and plant interactions. And you can see this beautiful tapestry of colors of all the different plants. The dunes are sparsely covered, and you can see the shifting sand in and around it. I'm going to take a little time with this slide just because some of the things I'll talk about here will be carried forward to some of the other slides. The California poppy occurs throughout California in many different plant communities. In other places, it may be an annual plant, but in Half Moon Bay, it behaves like a herbaceous perennial. A herbaceous perennial is a plant that can live for a number of years, but usually dies down after fruiting and reemerges from the same root system as the following year. Showing the whole plant here, let's see. You can notice that our poppy color is a little bit different than the ones that you may see over the hill. They have these dark orange centers and yellow lobed petals. And this is a naturally occurring plant color form that we have here in Half Moon Bay. Has these gray-green leaves. And now I'm going to talk a bit about flower structure here. We have the bud of the plant with the sepals. The sepals are 2 fused petals that kind of protect the flower as it's growing. And as the flower grows, the sepals pop off, and you can often see them lying in the ground. There are 4 petals and mini stamen, And then the pistil, the female part of the plant, the stamen produce the anthers, and the pistil part of the plant includes the stigma, style, and the ovary. The seeds develop in this is a capsule. This seed holding structure, the ovary is called a capsule, and the seeds develop in it, and the fruit. This is called a fruit, and as it ripens, the seeds develop and they pop out of this capsule-like structure onto the ground. A little bit about scientific names. The California poppy, Eschscholzia californica, is a binomial Latin name. In Greek or Latin, often named for a person, place, or morphological characteristic of the plant. The naming system will have to meet the rules of the International Code of Nomenclature and is written up in a document describing the plant and naming the plant. In this case, Eschscholzia was named for the botanist Johann Eschscholtz, who was there when it was collected, and I quote, on dry, sterile sand at the port of San Francisco in 1816. Of course, the first people to name and know the California poppy were the many tribes of people native to California, the indigenous people. I've yet to find their name for the California poppy, but in M.K. Anderson's book, Tending the Wild, Native American Knowledge and Management of California's Natural Resources, it is mentioned that they use the California poppy to alleviate toothaches, stomach problems, and induce sleeps. And the indigenous people did have many uses for the plants that we'll see today. So there we are. The next slide shows another plant, the beach strawberry. And I'm going to show how it adapts to living in sand. It has a deep, fibrous root system that holds the sand in place and also can get moisture and nutrients when available in the soil. It reproduces by these runners called stolons, and the runners form a net-like pattern over the sand, keeping the sand down, maybe stabilizing the dunes so there's not as much sand drift. This is the fruit of the beach strawberry here. Looks very much like our strawberry. The beach strawberry's natural range and worldwide range are the coasts of California, South America, and Hawaii. Migratory birds are said to have dispersed the species from the Pacific coast of North America to Chile and Hawaii. But it was first collected in Chile, therefore the name Chiloensis. The beach strawberry was crossed with Fragaria virginiana, the common wild strawberry, to make the domestic strawberries that we eat today. You can see the beautiful petals and the many stamens and the really leathery leaves here, allowing it to grow in the sand. The next slide is yellow sand verbena. Yellow sand verbena is a long-lived herbaceous perennial, trailing along the ground. The large root tuber that you see here stores nutrients and water, making it available to the plant. Succulent leaves store water, and the sand blows off the smooth leaves. The nectar, the flowers in a cluster here with many tubular flowers have a lot of nectar that attract the butterflies. The seaside buckwheat has gray leaves and hairs that is caused by the hairs that grow on the surface of the leaf and the undersurface of the leaf as well. These help the leaf to reflect sunlight, And dew and fog get trapped in the hairs, keeping the leaves moist, fresh and moist. The inflorescence, the flower, where the flowers occur, is branched and has many small nectar-filled flowers in each umbel. Flower, 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 flower. And you can see here that it's being pollinated by this bumblebee. The coastal sagewort is another herbaceous perennial. This one is in the sunflower family with non-showy flowers, they say, and they are kind of. It is a dioecious plant, which means that separate houses. The male flowers occur on one plant and the female flowers occur on another. They are mostly wind pollinated. And you can see from the gray foliage that they're also reflecting light and capturing moisture. They're not fragrant like some sagebrushes are in this group. And the genus is Artemisia, is named for the mythological Greek goddess of the hunt and wild nature. The beach morning glory, Calistegia soldanella, is another herbaceous plant that grows like a vine on the dunes. The plants come up from the underground stems all along the dunes. The leaves are kidney-shaped and leathery and smooth, and the sand just slips right off. They have large individual pink tubular flowers that open only in the full sun and the heat of the day. The nectar-holding flowers are pollinated mostly by bees and butterflies. The silky beach pea, Lathyrus littoralis, is another mat-forming plant with gray, silky hairy leaves. The flowers are fragrant, pink and white, and are pea-shaped because it's in the pea family, the Fabaceae family. The lupin roots grow nitrogen-fixing nodules with the help of bacteria in the soil that add nitrogen to the soil, making it available to the surrounding community. All family names end in A, C, E, A, E, and there's always a plant named for this part of the name. In this case, the name is faba for the fava bean. The scientific name for fava bean is Vicia faba, which is grown locally by our local farmers here in Half Moon Bay. Common names for this family, Fabaceae, are the pea and the legume family. You can see these beautiful flowers, so fragrant, and just so beautiful when they're on flower. I wanted to mention that most of these plants are not in flower right now. Some are, but our main flowering season for the plants in Half Moon Bay is between March and July. So you won't see these maybe until the flowers until next year. Well, that is just a few of the plants that you will see in the dune plant community. This slide shows the rolling dunes, and the dune plant community does extend north along the beach to Dunes Beach and Venice Beach. So that's the end of the dune plant community, but there's lots of other plants to see out there when you have the time. We're going to move on now to the riparian wetlands. Pelarcitos Creek comes out there along the Coastside Trail when you come out of this nature trail. And this is the riparian plant community. Riparian means situated on the banks of a river, and along the trail here, it is dominated by the arroyo willow. This is my backdrop as well. It's windswept by wind and salt from the air and the nearby ocean, keeping the willows low growing and naturally pruned by nature. They have this naturally sheared, pruned look about them when they live here on the coast. Willows can only live near fresh water and produce shelter and food for a lot of wildlife. This photo was taken in the late fall and shows the beautiful red and yellow colors of the stems and leaves. And that's the Pelarcetos Creek. The arboreal willow flowers in early spring, and each tree is dioecious, male on one plant and female on another plant. The flowers are arranged in catkins, kind of looks like a cat's tail. Male flowers are full of pollen and blow in the wind to the female flowers. Once pollinated, the seeds have tufts of hair that allow them to float in the wind to other parts. The leaves, I'm going to talk about this willow leaf sawfly, gall. The leaves, the sawfly, which is a kind of wasp, lays its egg on the surface. This is just one egg that it's laid. And the plant responds by forming this mass of undifferentiated tissue where the egg can develop and hatches into this larval form. The larva eats the debris, the plant home, the gall, and digests it. And when it's ready, it eats its way out or falls out just because the home is collapsed, lands somewhere and makes a silky cocoon, and then flies again as the adult flying sawfly. There are many different types of galls. The book I use is by Ron Russo, The Field Guide to the Plant Galls of the Western States. Ron Russo. Another tree that grows in the riparian forest is the red alder. It's another deciduous tree. The bright green leaves are produced after it flowers. The tree is monoecious, one house. Both male and female flowers are on the same plant, but in different locations, and they look different as well. The male flowers produce a great quantity of pollen that blows in the wind to the female flower, fertilizing the ovary. The trees are quite large. This is it in its deciduous form. And there you can see all the catkins, female catkins and male catkins here. Okay, we're going to move along the trail now to the marine terrace. Heading south along the Coastside Trail, you can see this beautiful marine terrace. This is a fisheye view of the Half Moon Bay Marine Terrace. This photo was taken by Steve Mahler on June 15th. This terrace was uplifted as a result of fault activity and sea level rise and fall over thousands of years, mainly a result of temperature change during the ice ages. The marine terrace that Half Moon Bay lives on is as old as 20,000 years old. The soil is ancient compacted sandstone. The elevation is about 30 to 75 feet tall, and you can see the different regions of the bluff top that we're going to walk on today: the Railroad Avenue bluff top, the Poplar Avenue bluff top, and the Wavecrest bluff top. Also, this area shows how much coastal grassland and wild land we have along this coast that produces such a variety of plants and animals that live here. Let's see. The Coastside Land Trust just sponsored a webinar by Alvaro Jaramillo And there's a link on the reference page to his talks, and he talks all about the birds that are out here. And so I hope you'll have a look at that talk, and you'll see a lot more of this area from the bird's eye, from the bird, and learn to recognize the birds. Okay. This aerial photo taken a while back by this company here shows the coastal bluff top habitat along Railroad Avenue. This is Railroad Avenue that runs along here parallel to the railroad bluff top. Here you can see the Coastside Trail, the paved Coastside Trail, and the grasslands, and the coastal scrub that I'm going to be talking about. And there are lots of wetlands out here too that aren't so easy to see at this time when this photo is taken. But this photo shows it was taken in March of 2016. And you can see the green areas where the plants are starting to green up, the isolated trees, and this this wetland area here at Poplar Beach is very visible at this time of the year as a wetland. The coastal scrub, yes, okay. The bluff top along the coastal trail. It's a multi-use trail with a variety of wildflowers. The soil is very compacted sandstone. The grasslands along the Coastside Trail here is really a remnant coastal prairie because it's disjunct and forms islands of communities along the way, and it's not contiguous. Along the and the trail is crisscrossed with these dirt pathways as well. Here shows the islands of grasses and wildflowers that can be seen when you're walking along the trail. So I'm going to talk about them now. These are some of the native plants that you'll see along the trail. The Lindley's varied lupin is a low-growing herbaceous perennial. And the inflorescence is this here, has many fragrant flowers. Each plant, the reason it's called varied or varicolor is because the plants can range in color, flower colors from white to yellow to pink to blue. Pollinated here by this large bumblebee going in for the nectar and the pollen. Seeds are produced in pods, these pods here, and each pod contains several seeds. These are very fragrant. You can see that the flower color changes as the flowers mature. They get this more pinkish color, and then the new ones are more white and blue. The bull clover is an annual low-growing plant. We have very few annual plants along the coast, just because of our environmental conditions. You can see this low-growing plant intermingled with the native grass, maritime brome, Bromus maritimus, that is a component of the coastal prairie. The flowers are formed in an umbel-like cluster with many flowers in a head, pea-shaped flowers in a head. And here it's being pollinated by this bee. The leaves refer to the name Trifolium. They're three-parted, 3 leaflets, and all clovers have 3 leaflets, Trifolium. Okay. The seaside daisy is in the sunflower family, Asteraceae family. Flowers in this family come in many different shapes and forms, and it is the 2nd largest plant family worldwide. The orchid family is the largest. But in California, the sunflower family has the most species. The seaside daisy has a flower head with many flowers. It's kind of its own bouquet. The pink strap-shaped flowers, flower, hundreds of them, are called ray flowers. And the small 5-lobed disc flowers, many, all of these are in bud here, and these are in flower, has many flowers, yellow. These beautiful bright center are called the disc flowers with many flowers. So each, one of these flowers in some members of the sunflower family are capable of producing a great quantity of seeds. These seeds are called achenes, and often they have this hair-like pappus associated with them that blows in the wind or gets attached to an animal's fur and travels along for germination in another place or nearby or far away. The seeds are full of high protein for the animals and wildlife as well. And I just love this kind of a combination, the purple and the yellow. It's just a great plant for the garden as well. There are several different kinds of gold fields on the San Mateo coast. Lasthenia californica and minor are two of them. Like the seaside daisy, the flowers are in a head with ray flowers and disc flowers. You can see the 5-lobe little disc flowers here. These are all going to be flowers. They produce these fruit called achenes, and these seeds called achenes. It's actually fruit too. And they have this tiny pappus that also allows them to blow in the wind and get attached to the animal's fur and travel that way. When I see the sea pink from a distance, it looks like waving pink pom-poms. The leaves are very narrow and strap-shaped, and each individual plant have elongated peduncle, the stalk to the inflorescence, and with many pink 5-lobed petaled flowers. Blue-eyed grass grows in the wetter areas along the trail. Sometimes when conditions are right and the timing of rain and temperature fluctuations, we can get masses of them, as you see here. The flowers come in various shades of purple, but are rarely blue. And it's not a grass, it's an iris, but its common name is blue-eyed grass. Each flower has 3 separate petals and 3 separate sepals that look very much alike, but the sepals are always on the outside of the petals, and there are the petals. Here are 2 different species in the evening primrose family, the Varaiegateed family. Suncup blooms early in the spring, and Hooker's evening primrose blooms in the summer and may still be flowering right now. The suncup is a herbaceous perennial that grows very low to the ground with a basal rosette of leaves. The flowers in this family have the ovary located below the sepals. In this case of the suncup, the ovary is just barely below ground, and the dispersal of the seeds is probably by ground-dwelling animals. The Hooker's evening primrose is an upright plant, 4 to 5 feet tall, with many yellow flowers in the inflorescence. I've read that the white-lined sphinx moth and bees are the main pollinators for this plant, but the goldfinches love to eat the seeds. And this is the seed pod here. So the sepals and petals and stamen and pistil would have been above this ovary, which is not a typical form plant morphology. Along the trail, you will see these lovely signs put up by the locals. Grow gratitude, harvest happiness. I love it. Now we're going to move to the coastal prairie and the coastal bluff scrub at Wavecrest. This is an aerial photo showing Wavecrest. You can see very clearly here this beautiful marine terrace. We're still on compacted marine sandstone soils. Wavecrest is an area of about 250 acres altogether, and about 230 plant species have been documented there so far. The new ones are found all the time by Wavecrest land stewards who monitor Wavecrest. The paved trail ends, and then becomes a dirt pathway. So the habitats that you're going to see up close here is the coastal prairie habitat, an intact coastal prairie habitat. One of the only places really where in Half Moon Bay you can see a intact coastal prairie. We'll also see a lot of coastal scrub, and we'll see wetlands as well. So we'll be talking about those plant communities and showing you those photos. Before I do, I wanted to mention that I've put my plant list, all of my plant lists for all the public open space lands that I've ever worked on, onto CalFlora. CalFlora is a repository for plant lists and photographs that people have made for many years. And they serve the community and the public, and you can produce these wonderful what grows here plant lists. And when you do, then you get all of the photographs of all of the plants that grow there. So if you're trying to identify a plant, you can go through this and see if you can identify your plant through the photos. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I've also put all of my slides on Flickr, and I have photographs and albums of every every open space preserve that I visited. And you can go to the one for Wavecrest. By the way, these URLs, or these links, are going to be at the Coastside Land Trust website on a reference page, so you don't have to worry about writing all the stuff down right now. But I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of resources out there to help you learn about our plants. The coastal prairie and the coastal blufftop scrub at Wavecrest. The coastal prairie grasslands and low-growing coyote brush, which is I call blufftop, coyote brush, blufftop scrub, are intermingled together in these open and leaving these open areas for all of the native grasses and the wildflowers. The habitat supports a wide variety of wildlife, including voles, moles, gophers, snakes, lizards, frogs, insects, and many, many others. Like the other habitats I've talked about the interaction between plants and animals and soil and climates, these plants all grow together because of these factors. Okay. There are 4 perennial native grasses that grow at Wavecrest, and this is why it's called coastal prairie. The most common grass is the Xanthonia californica, the California oat grass. Perennial grasses like this grow in clumps, excuse me, with leaving space in between for the animals to roam and for seeds to collect and wildflowers to grow. The flowers of the grasses the grasses do have flowers. You can see the stamen here. They're in a spikelet, and this contains a spikelet of many seeds. Several, more than one seed will be produced, all of these individual flowers. Let's see. Also, this plant has some hidden seeds in the axis of the leaf here. And these, this is for the browsing animals. If they eat the above ground part or it gets damaged, these seeds are secure here, and then they'll allow for the germination of the plant to take place. These are called hidden seeds. Another big name for them is cleistogamous. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention one more thing. There's a webinar that was put on by Post on the indigenous peoples of the Bay Area by anthropologist, archaeologist Mark Hilkema. He's also the Cultural Resource Program Supervisor for the Santa Cruz District of State Parks. Let's see, hold on, just a second, sorry. The title of his webinar was the Indigenous Peoples of the Bay Area. I've got a link to this on my webpage, and I really recommend that you watch it to learn about the indigenous people that lived here and used so many of these plants in their culture. This is coyote, oh, do I have the name? Yeah, coyote brush, Baccharis pilularis, the low-growing form of Baccharis pilularis, of coyote brush, very low-growing to the ground. This is a dioecious species. That means the flowers are on separate plants as well, as I've talked about in the past. Where's my cursor? There it is. There's the male flowers, and this is in the sunflower family with only disc flowers. And so it's not a very showy flower, but it produces a lot of pollen that blows into the wind to the female flowers, pollinating them. And then once they produce seeds, they have these little tufts of hair called pappus that blow in the wind, get attached to the animal fur, and get distributed widely. We have a rare plant out there at Wavecrest called the Chorus's popcorn flower. You can see it here forming a mat all along the ground in the moister areas. Here with the grasses and low-growing coyote scrub. The white forget-me-not flowers looking like popcorn. The annual sky lupin with blue, the color of sky. You can see the color change as the flowers mature. They change color. Maybe they've already been pollinated, or they're setting their seeds, starting to set their seeds now. But the young flowers are white, and the older ones have this pink banner. The lupins are, this is an annual plant. I think I mentioned that. Another one of our few annual plants. Puts on quite a show out there in the grassland. Very fragrant flowers. Another member of the pea family is the variegated clover, Trifolium variegatum. This is a low-growing annual with pink and white flowers and 3-lobed leaves. All parts of the plants are edible and for most wildlife, and the seeds contain high protein, a lot of protein. By the way, many farmers plant clovers as a rotating crop to add nutrients to the soil. And this is another nitrogen fixing plant. So it has the nitrogen fixing nodules that are making nitrogen and contributing it to the soil. We're moving along to the next plant community, the coastal bluff scrub on the bluff top. You can see that it occurs mainly on the edges of the coastal prairie and the edges of the bluff top and in the gullies that we have here out at Wavecrest. The plants grow more upright here, but are still fairly low growing. They're a combination of herbaceous perennials and shrubs. The gullies are hanging gardens out there in Wavecrest. The eroding soil provides looser soil for plants to grow on. And so the yellow bush lupin and lizard tails have become established in these gullies. The seaside woolly sunflower is an upright shrub in the sunflower family. You can see each individual cluster head of flowers is composed of ray flowers and disc flowers. Has very gray, hairy leaves, and it makes a beautiful color. In fact, I think there's still some in bloom now. The next plant is the yellow bush lupin. It's another upright shrub in the pea family, but a very short-lived shrub. The leaves are palmately lobed. It's a compound leaf with, these are the leaflets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 leaflets in this that are kind of like the palm of your hand with your fingers radiating outward. Has very, very, very fragrant flowers that attracts many insects, and especially the bumblebees love them. The seeds are formed in this fruit-like pod and are not edible and contain high levels of alkaloids, making them very bitter. There they all are, so beautiful. The gully along the trail is a great place to see the yellow bush lupin, especially when it's in full bloom. So this is the coastal scrub all along the edges, coastal bluff scrub up here, and coastal prairie. The bluff lettuce, or live forever, the name because if the plant is disturbed or uprooted, it will again settle in and grow again. You can see the waxy, sturdy flowers that hold a lot of nectar for bees and hummingbirds. The leaves are covered in this gray, waxy coating and are very succulent. This is one of our true succulent plants that we have along on the coast. This is the Douglas iris, maybe the more typical form of the iris flower that you are used to. It grows from rhizomes under the ground, and the plant can spread asexually underground, forming large branches under the ground, reproducing clonal colonies. The bright green leaves can be seen year-round. The flower has 3 separate sepals, 1, 2, 3, 3 separate petals, 1, 2, 3, and 3 petal-like stigma lobes. So this is the female stigma here, style lobes, I'm sorry, this is the style. The stigma is actually right in there. And when the insect comes in, it leaves its pollen on the stigma, gathering nectar and pollen after it comes out, it goes out, and the stigma is upward facing, so it is not pollinating that particular flower. This is White's paintbrush. It's a very colorful plant on the coastal scrub. It is a hemiparasite, getting water and nutrients from its roots, from other nearby plants. It usually grows in association with a particular plant in its habitat, getting the nutrients and water from that plant. Most of what you see here are bracts, which are modified leaves. All this colorful stuff, a lot of it is are called bracts. The flowers are almost hidden in the bracts, but you can see here these small beak-like flowers. They are pollinated by hummingbirds and other insects. The flowers have lots of glandular hairs with oil that excrete oil glands that inhibit them from being eaten by animals. The soap plant, or AMOLE, is a low-growing plant with strap-shaped fibrous leaves. The flowers have 6 perianth segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that combine together. Perianth segments is the collective term for the sepals and the petals. They usually flower from the bottom to the top, and you can see this flower has already starting to form its fruit, and these are just flowering at the top here. These flowers usually only last for about, each individual flower only lasts for about 1 day. They flower in the afternoon through the evening, referring to the name pomeridianum, which means past the meridian or in the afternoon. So much is known about the indigenous people and their uses. There are many uses that has been passed down through their oral history about the uses of this plant. I refer you again to M. Kate Anderson's book, Tending the Wild, to learn more about that. These beautiful basal rosette of very tough leaves. The bee plant is a herbaceous perennial that can grow up to 3 or 4 feet tall. The inflorescence is of many bee-shaped tubular flowers filled with nectar. You can see this large bumblebee getting nectar and pollen, flying from one flower to another. The sticky monkey flower is in the snapdragon family. The whole plant is sticky with glandular hairs. As I mentioned, this adaptation may prevent herbivores from eating the plant because of its bad taste. The bright orange flowers are fused into a cup that holds the nectar for insect visitors. You can see it growing in association with California sagebrush here. One of the last slide of the Coastal Bluff scrub is the farewell to spring, heralding the end of spring and flowers into summer. So it's a more of a late blooming flower. Another one of our annual plants, the pink flowers with darker pink centers, it also makes a wonderful garden plant. I'll talk more about garden plants in the next presentation next week. We're going to move on to the wetlands now and the seasonally wet areas. These occur along the trail in many areas and east of the trail. Some of these occur along the trail. You can see the dark green colors indicating the community. These plants usually stay green for longer. They are filled, this area is filled with wetland indicator plants. These are just a few. The western rush often grows along trail where water has been standing for a period of time. And the spreading rush forms these large clumps that you can see in the surrounding wetlands. The brown-headed rush lives in water and has specialized cells to be able to do this. Notice here the exerted pink stigma lobes, waving in the wind for pollen. The low-growing toad rush is also a wetland indicator plant. This plant is very low-growing, maybe only about 3 or 4 inches tall. Almost like a vernal pool, we have on the Half Moon Bay poplar bluff top. This hard-packed soil here is a result of continuous heavy metal working to cover an old dump site that used to be here, making a bowl-like depression where water stands for a long time. These goldfields put on quite a show here every year. The trees that we see on the Coastside Trail are in their own plant community. They are very windswept. This is the Monterey cypress. It's very windswept here. You can see by the wind and salt spray. Let's see. These trees were planted maybe over 100 years ago, possibly to delineate property lines or as windbreaks. You can see that there's very little understory vegetation under the Monterey cypress because of the alkalinity that the leaves produce and inhibiting some other plants from growing near them. The Monterey cypress's natural range is in Monterey County, but these trees were planted and we do have quite an extensive grove of Monterey cypress here. They grow very well. Before these trees were planted, this landscape was a treeless forest, except for the Monterey pine that has a naturally occurring population at Año Nuevo. So the natural range for the Monterey pine is South San Mateo County at Año Nuevo, Monterey County, San Luis and San Luis Obispo counties. Move on. So this will end our walk for the day. This aerial photo shows the marine terrace from Kelly to just beyond Redondo Beach Road. Here it's overlaid with the old lots that are unbuildable. In order to secure this entire area for plants and wildlife and our own recreational uses, the Coastside Land Trust is trying to purchase the rest of this property. Okay, I see that it's 11 o'clock now, so I am going to move along and talk about, here's the Coastside Land Trust, their stewardship of the land. We have a native plant nursery at Half Moon Bay State Parks that does a lot of restoration work and grows native plants, and a really nice demonstration garden as well. This is an area that they've restored. It was bulldozed at one time, and now it has been replanted with the native plants and has a beautiful coastal scrub vegetation. Here's the nursery. And you can garden with natives. I have a native plant garden, and I'm attracting all the insects and wildlife that I can. I've written this book, The Plants of Me and Myself, Avis Boutel and Nancy Frost, my have written this book, The Plants and Plant Communities of the San Mateo Coast, which is available for purchase through the Coastside Land Trust. And all the profits go to state parks and Coastside Land Trust. These are 3 flowers that you might see in bloom right now at Wavecrest. Let's see, the pink cudweed, the goldenrod, and the panicled willow herb. Next week, we will be visiting the hanging gardens of Devil's Slide, the incredible diversity of coastal scrub at Bean Hollow, and the amazing coastal prairie at Año Nuevo. And that is the end of my talk. And now I'm going to be answering questions, and it's just 11 o'clock. Welcome to all of you guys, by the way. Thanks for joining me. Okay, I'm waiting for my questions. Let's see. Questions. Just a second, I'm going to get Kate, who's, there she is.
Hi. So one of the questions the first questions that you had was, are the beach strawberries edible?
Oh, yes. But we try to leave them for the wildlife.
Another question is, on the seaside daisy, are you saying that the pink things that look like petals are actually individual flowers?
Yes, yes, hundreds of them. It's a bouquet. That whole head is a bouquet with many, many, many flowers. And that situation of the coastside daisy has the ray flowers and the disc flowers.
I think that's new news to a lot of people, actually, learning flowers nut structure. And so the next question is, so what appears to be the daisy flower is really a cluster of many individual flowers as well. On the close-up flower photos, there's a photo of a bloom. Let's see, I don't know if you'll
if they have the photo number, that would help.
Okay, yeah, so Candace sent a message saying, is this one in bloom? Not in bloom, the same as the flower, or let's see. On the close-up flower photos, there's one photo of in bloom and one that is not. Is the one not in bloom the same flower dying?
I'm not sure what slide you're talking about, but why don't you leave that question for me to answer later? And
okay.
that person can add the slide number, then I'll be able to go right to that slide and try to answer that question.
Perfect. She actually time-stamped it, but that would be great for afterwards.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Bluff lettuce wild, or
all these are native plants that grow wild all along the San Mateo coast. And these specific flowers that I'm talking about today all grow wild in Half Moon Bay.
But what about, Ronald asks, is the ground under the Monterey cypress acidic or alkaline?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's alkaline. Okay. Or is it acidic? I'll have to answer that question later. I'll do more research. I can't remember right now. I think it's acidic.
And the next question is, I noticed there's a preponderance of yellow flowers in the coastal area on Fitzgerald Bluff. What's the reason for this?
Fitzgerald Bluff. Yellow flowers on Fitzgerald Bluff. Well, I think I do know the plant that they're talking about. It could be the coast yellow leptosiphon croceus, which is a very rare plant that only occurs. Now you're Fitzgerald Bluff. Okay, it's not Valamar Bluff. I'm not sure what flower, what people can do is, you know, in their questions, send me a photograph of a flower and I'll try to identify it.
Great.
But yes, we do have a lot of yellow flowers, and you know, the insects are attracted to them.
Jan asks, is burning needed to keep Baccharis from taking over coastal prairie, or is coyote brush naturally limiting in?
Yes, interesting. The coastal prairie that I've been observing at Wavecrest has been fairly stable without the coyote brush encroaching that much onto into the coastal prairie. But the indigenous people did burn the coastal prairie. The coastal prairie really extended all along the San Mateo coast. And the Native Americans burned the fields to produce more seeds for the plants, also to encourage wildlife to come into the area so they could hunt them more easily. They tended the wild. That book will really tell you, by M. Cat Anderson, will really tell you a lot about how the indigenous people lived here, as well as Mark Hickama's webinar through POST, Peninsula Open Space Trust. You'll get a lot of information by just watching that series of webinars by him.
Todd asks, can you talk a bit about the anthropogenic influences in the plant communities?
I'd rather answer that question, you know, in the end, because I don't really know what you're talking about.
What about, why, oh, this is a question, yeah, I had this too. Why does the coast support, Sandy asks, why does the coast support so few annual plants when you're talking about the environment?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with the combination of environmental factors here. We have a very harsh climate. I mean, you know, with all the wind and salt spray. I'm just talking about west of Highway 1. So there's not a lot of annual plants there, probably because of those environmental conditions.
Did you want to say something? Alan was asking about specific problems with the invasive plant species.
Yeah, the invasive plant species make up about 1/3 of all of our California flora. And here on the coast side, that's true too. So we do have a lot of introduced plants that have become naturalized, and they do disturb these natural plant communities. There's so much information about introduced plants through the California Native Plant Society, a group that is dedicated to the preservation of California native plants. You can learn a lot about invasive plants, what work is being done to remove them, and how different areas are dealing with non-native naturalized invasive plants.
Can you talk about, Emma asked, can you talk more about the rare Lasthenia californica?
Lasthenia californica.
SST.
So yes, we do along the Coastside Trail, excuse me, on the Railroad Avenue section, have a rare plant, the Lasthenia californica macrantha. And it's a perennial goldfield, unlike the other goldfields that are annual, and it grows quite common there along the Coastside Trail. Does that answer the question?
Just yeah. How do you tell the various paintbrushes apart from one another?
Yeah, that's very complicated. and you have to look at all parts of the plant. The roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds to identify the different species often. Sometimes you can get the gestalt of the plant because the flowers may be bigger or longer. Sometimes the color can tell you a lot about what species you have, but it's a very difficult task to try to distinguish them one from the other, the paintbrushes.
Catherine asks, can the sand plants grow in backyard soil?
Yes, not sure about that. Oh, yes, I know that the coastal buckwheat is a great plant for the garden, and it can, yes, a lot of these plants do actually grow in other plant communities as well. Some are restricted to the sand dunes community, but they also grow in other areas too. And of course, these plant communities are also intermingled with each other and overlapping. So yes, some of the dune plants can be used in the garden. I do have a plant list for plants to grow in the garden in Half Moon Bay that I can give to you, so you can put it on the webpage. Also, a great place to buy native plants in Half Moon Bay is Yerba Buena Nursery on Highway 1, just a little east of on 92. And they're a great resource for native plants in our area and in California, actually.
Thank you. And Catherine and everyone else who's interested in what Toni was just saying, we'll add that to the follow-up email that will be coming out in a few days. There's some great questions. So Joanne was asking you what future do you see for plants that depend on fog along the coast, given the inevitability of climate change?
Yeah, sea level and climate change, you know, that's all together part of our environment. You know, I wish I knew, but I'm just going to enjoy them now.
Good. Kim had a specific question. So she was wondering, she had identified a very low growing lavender plant that was blooming. I'm assuming that's color, you know, lavender colored plant blooming now at Wavecrest in the wet depressions.
Oh, yes, that might be pennyroyal in the mint family. It's a non-native plant, but it does grow in the wetland areas. It might be, but again, you'll have to send a photo, and you know, I'll have to have a look at the whole plant in the photo.
Airdrie, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but on slide 3, there was a recognition of there was a lily. Will that be covered in the next session?
Sorry, slide 3, coming. So, oh, now these flowers, I'm just showing a diversity of flowers. These flowers don't, maybe don't grow here in Half Moon Bay, but I will be talking about, I don't see a lily here. I see an orchid. Oh, I see the feathered adder tongue, which is in the lily family. I'm going to be talking about orchids.
Robert asks, is oxalis a big problem on the Coastside Trail?
Yes, yes. Oh, on the Coastside Trail. It's becoming more and more of a problem. You know, it mainly occurs a little bit further east of the Coastside Trail, but it is starting to occur along the Coastside Trail now, and it is a big problem. And it spreads by those underground bulblets that get everywhere. And it never sets seed. It just grows by these asexual reproduction, the reproduction of these bulblets that grow and spread around and grow new plants. So yeah, it could become a big problem on the Coastside Trail.
Emily asks, you mentioned that the beach morning glory opens in full sun, and she says, and I know that's similar to other morning glories in some other plants like poppies. Do you know why that is?
It's just in their genetic makeup. They, you know, just don't open until they have a certain amount of sunlight and a certain warmth and a certain temperature to open up. So yeah, it's just in their genetic makeup.
And then Jeff asks, which trees or flowers provide a lot of food sources for birds in the coastal bluffs?
Yeah, oh boy, there are a lot. I have to say that the birds here are very prolific, a lot of different species. If you listen to Alvaro's talk, you'll learn about some of the birds. So many birds use the plants, eat the plants, and transfer the seeds of plants around. I'm thinking of specific, I may have mentioned some specific like the Hooker's evening primrose, for instance. Those, the goldfinch does eat the seeds of that plant. Many, many others too. So maybe I can make a list of plants, but I suggest that you go to the California Native Plant Society webpage or the Yerba Buena Nursery webpage. And in there, they do tell you what plants are really good for the birds here on the coast side. And the California Native Plant Society has a Gardening with Natives section that you can join in and ask questions and learn about growing native plants on the coast, anywhere in California.
Susan asked that to share the beach strawberry in her garden doesn't have fruit. Are there sterile forms?
There might be sterile forms. I have the beach strawberry too, and I do get fruit. So, you know, maybe they get eaten really soon, or maybe the flowers just don't get pollinated. It's hard to know why it wouldn't get fruit, but it may be a sterile hybrid.
Friedel asks, often coastal vegetation seems to be areas of mixed plant populations, not usually large stands of single type plants. What benefit does that have?
Well, maybe adding to the diversity of the environment. Yeah, I'm not, could you repeat the question again?
Sure. Often coastal vegetation seem to be areas of mixed plant populations, not usually large stands of single type plants.
Yeah, the diversity really is, you know, the diversity of plants really, not all the plants of the same species in one area, but scattered around on the bluff tops. And this adds to the diversity of the animals, the interactions with the animals that occur there too. So the more biodiversity, more plants that you have in a plant community will attract more animals to that community. So a diverse plant community is really preferable, or you know, more common probably, just for the plants and animal interactions.
Maybe just a couple more. Susan asked on slide 20, she said, I think you said that the willow forms a gall around the egg of the sawfly and the larva feeds on the gall. What's the benefit or reward the willow gets from feeding the sawfly, if any?
It's providing a home. The benefit.
But the benefit or reward the willow gets from feeding the sawfly?
No, but fortunately it produces a lot of leaves and leaves room for these insects to live there as well. I don't know. The benefit. Sorry.
Todd was asking if you wanted to speak to the human influence, and you kind of have actually here since, but human influences on plant communities, as you mentioned, the soils and unbuilt lots, maybe changing hydrology, introduction of invasives or restoration efforts.
Yeah. So he wants me to speak about
human influence in the area.
Human influence. Well, you know, we have had an impact, and we've, some plant communities no longer exist. Some plants have become extinct because of human impact. Plant communities, though, if left undisturbed, can sometimes go back to their natural environment. Sometimes they need help. Restoration, planting native plants, bringing back the wild plants to an area. Some, you know, areas will never rejuvenate and come back, and you know, it just doesn't have the right requirements anymore for the plants that you try to put there, or just you know, they doesn't have the right combination of the environmental factors right now. I don't think I answered that question very well, but there's so much to know about the impact of humans of us and non-natives plants on the environment, and how it causes great disturbance for the natural plants and wildlife that live in the natural areas.
It's like we actually have 4 more that finish this out. Can we, you want to address these last 4 questions?
Sure.
Is there a native pine or oak for this area, especially in the Montara open space?
Montara, native pine or oak. Let's see. Yes, Quercus agrifolia does occur in San Pedro Valley County Park. I know that. Not a lot of them, but some. But the coastal landscape that I was talking about today, the coastal prairie and the coastal scrub, and this area, this narrow area along Highway 1 was a treeless landscape before the Monterey pines and the eucalyptus and the Monterey cypresses were planted here. But those pines and cypresses at Wavecrest have brought in a tremendous amount of birds, especially raptors that nest and use them now. And, you know, so they're serving a purpose. And they grow nearby and not so far away. And we have the ideal conditions for them to grow here because they grow here just as well as they do in their natural range.
Do different plants grow, Joanne asked, do the different plants grow on the east side of the hills in the coastal scrub than the west side?
We don't call the coastal scrub on the other side. It's just called chaparral, and other forms of shrubby like vegetation. There's other plant communities there too. Chaparral.
And the question is about ice plant. Richard Corelli, your husband, is asking, can you talk about ice plant? It seems
no. Oh boy. Leave it to him. Well, ice plant is a non-native plant, and we have 2 forms, one from South America and one from South Africa, that were planted along the coast to stabilize the dunes. And they love it here. They spread out and smother all of the other plants that live around them. And we don't have the natural predators that eat ice plant, so it's not controlled in any way. And so they just send these long runners out and form mats, and as I said, smother all the other plants. We're trying, State Parks is trying to remove the ice plant now that was planted a long time ago. And when we do remove the ice plant from some of these areas, the native plants seem to come back, especially the lizard tail. It may have been smothered under the ground, the seeds may have been dormant, but after the ice plant is removed, it comes right back.
And the last question, I think it sounds like you have a great reference for this answer too, that you referred to a little bit, but Carol was asking, native plants evolved largely without human interference, i.e. before people arrived from Asia. How did their arrival impact native plants? Were some species driven to extinction by early human presence?
Yeah, I don't know if some plants were driven to extinction, but as I mentioned, the indigenous people did tend the wild, and they burned the coastal areas to produce seeds and flowers, and you know, to open up these areas so that, you know, the wildlife comes in. And there are a lot of references to in Mark Hickema's talk to what it was like here during that time, and how it's changed over time as well. And the indigenous people have passed down to us their oral history, and it's been written down. So now we can read about it and learn about it in a more informed way.
Thank you for taking the time to answer all of these questions. And Toni, thank you for a fabulous, fabulous presentation.
Oh.
We've all learned a lot today. Thank you all for being here today also. Just wanted to let you know, all of you know, that there will be a follow-up email that'll give a link to the following webinar. Toni will be, or Ms. Corelli will be doing another a webinar next week at the same time, Saturday, and she's going to be further talking about plants of the coastal community. Do you want to speak to that at all? The difference, or what they'll be looking at differently this next time?
Yeah, I think I did it this last slide.
Okay.
We'll be going to Devil Slide, we'll be going to Bean Hollow, and we'll be going to Año Nuevo and seeing some of the same plant communities, but different plants that occur in them, and some new plant communities. And those plants as well. I'll probably introduce you to another 40 plants or so.
Great. Thank you. And for those of you who you'll be getting an email in the next couple of days. And just a reminder to donate if you can. The Coastside Land Trust, as you know, is a nonprofit, and it runs by the generosity of donations. And Coastside Land Trust is doing really, really important preservation work right now, and land acquisition, and we all need this, as well as the wildflowers that we're talking about depend on this important work that's done by the Coastside Land Trust and by the stewardship program and all of their connections to that. Also, so we'll provide a link to that. If you're not dialed into us on social media, you can follow Coastside Land Trust on Facebook or Twitter, on LinkedIn and Instagram. So check us out there to keep abreast on what we're up to. Thank you, Toni.
Well, it went so fast. I thank you all for joining, and I can't wait to see you all next week.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Mm.